Ladies and gentlemen, good day and welcome to the Greenlam Industries Limited Q3 and 9-month FY26 earnings conference call. This conference call may contain forward-looking statements about the company, which are based on the beliefs, opinions, and expectations of the company as on date of this call. These statements are not the guarantees of future performance and involve risks and uncertainties that are difficult to predict. As a reminder, all participant lines will be in the listen-only mode, and there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions after the presentation concludes. Should you need assistance during the conference call, please signal an operator by pressing star, then 0 on your touch-tone phone. Please note that this conference call is being recorded. I now hand the conference over to Mr. Saurabh Mittal, Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer, Greenlam Industries India Limited. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Quarter 3 and 9 months FY26 earnings call. I'm pleased to have all of you on the call, and we'll be discussing the performance and the business updates of Q3 and 9 months. I'm joined by our CFO, Ashok, and someone from the finance team, as well as the SGA team, our investor relations advisors. I'm sure you've had the opportunity to look at the results and the investor presentation, which are available on the stock exchanges and on the company's website. I'll give you a small brief about some business updates of the last quarter, and just take you a little bit through the financial performance before I hand over the call to Ashok. So on the business side, on the laminate side, the brownfield expansion at the Naidupeta plant is progressing more or less as on track, and we should be up and running with our 2 additional lines in Q4 of FY27. On the laminates, in last quarter, we were awarded the largest exporter of laminates for, I think, last 16 years now. And this clearly marks our, performance in the category, considering the quality, innovation, dimensions, the global presence, the, diverse markets we have, and presence across categories of laminates. During the last quarter, we also streamlined our brand architecture. So now, as we move ahead, we're going to work on 2 brands, the Greenlam brand, which will carry Greenlam laminates, Greenlam facades, Greenlam sturdo, melamine chipboard, etc. And the second brand is going to be Mikasa. So Mikasa brand will carry the laminates. The erstwhile new mica becomes Mikasa laminates. We have the Mikasa plywood. We have the Mikasa veneer. The erstwhile deco becomes Mikasa veneers. And obviously, we have the Mikasa flooring and door. So we have 2 brands in the market, which we are going to push and promote and build. So I think that streamlines a lot of our operational issues on ground and also increases the value of every brand and the spend we do on, brand and promotion. On the chipboard business, I think chipboard business is also gradually improving. We improved our numbers and performance, reduced our losses there in Q3. We also successfully launched a high moisture resistant chipboard, which is the product comes with special moisture resistance properties, and we've had good feedback on the product. And as I talk with you, we are in the process of building the network and the customer base. So broadly, these were the large ticket business updates. On the revenue side, we grew 17% at 706 crores in Q3. From our expectation, the numbers were a bit lower. One is that versus Q2, sequentially, we obviously came down by nearly 100 crores of revenue. So Q3 usually has been a slow quarter for us, considering the, holiday season, etc., where there's a work disruption in India. And for our exports too, in the last 10, 15 days of December, people postponed shipments. So I think that's impacted, the Q3 revenues. And also, the domestic business has been a bit slower than our expectation. As we move ahead, I think Q4, we are driving to build the numbers well. And as we talk, things are going in a good direction. So we hope the Q4 numbers will be in line with the 80% top line growth. On the margin front, at the gross margin level, I think we improved in percent versus Q2 also. So I think pricing discipline, raw material costs, value addition, and that's all going in a good direction. And I think we've had one of the highest gross margins in Q3 of 55.5%, right? Slightly higher than Q2 also in terms of percent, not in terms of value. So at the gross margin level, I think we've done reasonably well. EBITDA, obviously we had a little bit of higher cost of operations. There's been, some exceptional losses on the wage code matter, and obviously we still have high depreciation and interest due to the recent capitalizations of the plants over the last 3 years. So I think the revenues need to kind of pull along, and we hope that Q4 is, better than what we did in Q3. And usually Q4 and Q2 are better quarters as we've seen in the past. And we're fairly confident that business will move in that direction itself. So I think that's it for me at the moment. So I'll hand over the call to Ashok, and Ashok will take you through all the numbers, and post which we can address your questions and queries if any. Ashok, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me take you through the financial performance for the quarter and for the 9 months. First, coming on to the quarterly performance, on a consolidated basis, our net revenue grew by 17.3% on year-on-year basis to 706 crore as compared to 602 crore in Q3 last year. Gross margin grew by 60 basis points and stood at 55.6% in this quarter from 55% in Q3 last year. Gross profit in absolute term also grew by 18.6% on YOY basis to 393 crore as compared to 331 crore in quarter 3 last year. EBITDA margin before forex fluctuations and exceptional item was declined by 170 basis points to 9.2% in this quarter as compared to 10.9% in Q3 last year, mainly on account of higher operating cost and the Naidupeta chipboard unit. EBITDA before forex fluctuation and exceptional item in absolute terms remained flat at 65 crore in this quarter as compared to last year. We incurred a net loss of 0.6 crore for the quarter on account of forex fluctuations, exceptional item, higher operation cost, higher interest and depreciation for chipboard businesses. Moving on to 9 months, net revenue for the 9 months grew by 15.9% on year-on-year basis and stood at 2188 crore as compared to 1888 crore. Gross margin was up by 160 basis point to 54.4% for the 9 months in comparison to 52.8% in 9 months last year. Gross profit in absolute terms grew by 19.4% to 1,191 crore as compared to 997 crore in 9 months last year. EBITDA margin before forex fluctuations and exceptional item was down by 80 basis points at 10.4% in comparison to 11.2% in 9 months last year. EBITDA before forex fluctuation and exceptional item grew by 7.5% to 227 crore in 9 months as compared to 211 crores last year. Net profit was down by 77% to 15.5 crore in 9 months as against 66.9 crore in 9 months last year. Now I'll move on to the segmental performance. First, the laminate and allied segment. In the quarter 3, revenue grew by 8.1% on year-on-year basis to 562 crore in this quarter from 520 crore in quarter 3 last year. EBITDA margin before forex fluctuations and exceptional item stood at 14.5%, a growth of 100 basis points on year-on-year basis. Production volume stood at 5.08 million sheets at a utilization level of 83%. Sales volume for the quarter stood at 4.75 million sheets, a decline of 0.4% on year-on-year basis. Our average realization for the quarter was 1,143 per sheet. Moving on to 9 months, laminate revenue grew by 7.5% and stood at 1,775 crore from 1,651 crore in 9 months last year. EBITDA margin before forex fluctuation stood at 15.4%, a growth of 150 basis points on year-on-year basis. Production volume were at 16.14 million sheets at a utilization of 88%. Sales volume for the 9 months stood at 15.48 million sheets, grew by 4.4% on year-on-year basis. Our average realization of laminate for 9 months was at 1,112 per sheet. Moving on to another segment, plywood and allied, which consists of plywood, decorative veneer, engineered doors, and engineered floors. Revenue for the quarter grew by 9.5% to 90 crore in this quarter in comparison to 82 crore in Q3 last year. EBITDA loss before forex fluctuation stood at 13.3 crore. For the 9-month, revenue grew by 18.6% on year-on-year basis to 281 crore from 236 crore in 9 months last year. EBITDA loss before forex fluctuation stood at, for the 9 months, stood at 25.8 crore. I'll move on to the next segment, which is panel and allied segment, which consists of chipboard. For this quarter, chipboard revenue grew by 13.3% on quarter-on-quarter basis to 54.2 crore. Since there was no sales, since we have started our business in quarter 4, so there is no comparison figure for the last year. EBITDA loss for the forex before forex fluctuation stood at 3.2 crore. Production volume stood at 30,028 cubic meter and at a utilization level of 41%. Sales volume for the quarter stood at 28,954 cubic meter, a growth of 10% on quarter-on-quarter basis, and average realization for the quarter stood at 18,668 cubic meters. For the 9 months, chipboard revenue stood at 133 crore. EBITDA loss before forex fluctuation stood at 20.9 crore. The production volume were at 78,146 cubic meter and at a utilization level of 36%. Sales volume for the 9 months stood at 69,851 cubic meters, and our average realization for the 9 months was at 18,992 cubic meters. Moving on to balance sheet item. In this quarter, our working capital cycle improved by 9 days to 58 days as compared to 67 days in Q3 last year. And net debt as on 31st December stood at 1,010 crore. That's all from my side. Now we will open the floor for the question and answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask questions may press star and 1 on the touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handsets for asking the question. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. The first question is from the line of Keshav Vijay Ratan Lauti from HDFC Securities. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity. So firstly, on your guidance, which you have given top line 18 to 20% for this year, still that holds true in light of, challenging demand environment. And secondly, the ply and particle board, chipboard should EBITDA break even next year?
For the sales growth, 9 months we're about 15.9% precisely growth. So depending on how Q4 goes, maybe we'll probably end up with sort of 18-20, maybe a percent, lower, maybe somewhere like on an annualized basis. So plus minus a little bit here, but I think we're not so way off despite the ground challenges of demand.
And in terms of break-even of plywood and chipboard, we expect that this will break even in the next year.
Got it. And how are things evolving on the US tariff side for laminate? Is it, customer and you both are taking the hit of the tariff?
Yeah. So as of now, since there is no end of the light in terms of when it will come kind of a thing, so as of now, the tariff is applicable on our product. So we have done and we have increased some of the prices to the market. So some of the hit has been taken by the customer, and rest is taken hit by subsidiary and as well as India office. Some of this has got offset in terms of when the depreciation in INR. So some is this getting depreciated, compensated from that.
Got it. Last question from my side. How are the laminates pricing trending domestic and export market? And lastly, how is the cost piece moving?
Sorry, will you come again, Keshav?
So my question is, has been any change in laminate pricing in domestic or international market? And secondly, is there any changes in raw material cost?
So laminate pricing in domestic is by and large stable. International pricing is also more or less stable. In few cases, due to the currency depreciation, we've had to kind of agree on certain discounts due to competitive pressures. On the raw material cost side, also by and large things are stable. Despite the rupee depreciation, chemical costs are more or less in the similar range. Deco paper, where we import the paper from Europe and from Asia, there obviously rupee term costs have gone up because of the currency depreciation. Otherwise, the base prices more or less remain similar. So net, you can assume that both sales prices and procurement prices are in a similar like a range, or not much movements there.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. A reminder to all the participants, you may press star and one to ask question. The next question is from the line of Utkarsh Napani from Anand Rathi. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, sir. So my first question is regarding your particle board division. So, sir, just wanted to know, like, rupee has weakened quite a lot over the past few months. So whether the industry is planning to take a good price hike in this category due to the impact of weakening rupee, or particle board prices are likely to remain stable due to the supply overhang in the domestic market for the next few quarters. So I just wanted your view on this.
Right. So chipboard, because imports of chipboard into India was anyway quite small, and post the QCO implementation, in 2025, I think it further, shrunk a bit because Indian capacities came up, high quality, and availability of better dimensions and local availability, etc. So, unfortunately, there's not much, impact of the rupee depreciation in terms of making imports more expensive and us more competitive. On the pricing side, as we see things now with the demand and supply, we are not seeing much room for, price increases in chipboard. What we are trying to do is improve the value mix by promoting, melamine-faced chipboard, which is pre-laminated particle board. And I also said earlier in the call, we launched high moisture resistant grade in particle board, which earlier was not so available in the market. Now 2 or 3 companies have launched that, where the realization per cubic meter is higher than the plain board. So I think steps are being taken to kind of upsell and also introduce, superior product or variants in the chipboard range. So I think that might lead to certain price per cubic meter price relation improvements.
Okay. And sir, what is our targeted capacity utilization for the particle board project for FY27? And on the capex side, sir, if you can give some idea how much capex we have already spent till December 25 and how much is remaining, and by what time frame we would spend the remaining amount.
So in terms of for the next year, we have targeted around 55-60% of the capacity utilization for the chipboard. And in terms of what is your next question?
Sir, capex, how much we have spent till date and how much it is spending?
Capex, in terms of that, most of the capex has been done. In terms of that, roughly around 50 to 75 crore rupees is pending, with some of this which may be spent in this quarter. If at all anything is remaining, that will be done in the Q1 of next year.
Okay. And sir, my next question is on the plywood segment. So earlier we were targeting to reach the break-even point in plywood by Q4 of FY26. But in Q3 of FY26, what we saw that our operating losses has gone up. So just wanted to know whether we would now like to revise our timeline of reaching the break-even point, which we were earlier targeting Q4 of FY26.
So Q3 in the plywood segment, actually, if you see, we slipped versus Q2 in terms of revenue. Gross margins also in that segment came down a bit because in that entire segment, a lot of raw material is imported. So in rupee term, the currency impact was there. So I think operational deleverage and some RM cost increase in rupee term because of the currency movement that has happened in the ply and allied category. We are hoping that Q4 will be a better period across all those sub-segments in the ply business, and we remain optimistic that things will improve in that segment also.
And sir, what would be our targeted capacity realization for plywood plant for FY27?
You see, as of now, on a 9-month basis, we are at a capacity utilization of around 34%, 35%, close to 35% kind of a thing. So there also our expectation is that we should be in the range of around 55-60% kind.
Okay. And sir, lastly, on the laminate side, sir, like you have mentioned in the press release that we have seen modest volume growth in the domestic market, while our volume was relatively flat on a YOY basis. So it implies that our export volume has gone down. So can you please specify the reason for the decline in our export volume and how the export is shaping up in the current March quarter? And on the realization front, sir, there has been a sharp improvement in laminate realization in December quarter. Sir, is it majorly because of the weakening rupee effect, and whether such higher realization is likely to be sustained going forward, or we will have to pass on the benefit of weak rupee to the consumer to push our volume in the export market going ahead? So these are my two questions on volume.
So I'll take the question on the volume part. So in exports, like I said earlier also in the call, that in the month of December, we've had postponement of shipments, for our European and UK market, postponed shipments to Jan from, let's say, December. So our inventory in transit actually has increased substantially, and so those sales should show up in Q4 as far as exports is concerned. On the price realization improvement, so you're right, largely price realization improvement has happened due to the weakening of the rupee and some value mix improvement in the export business. And the last question was, sorry.
So in terms of the volume, if you see for the export, the 9-month volume is higher. So, but in this quarter, as sir has mentioned, in terms of that only. Otherwise, we are on track in terms of that. There will be value growth in volume growth in both the segment will be there for 9 months.
Okay, got it, sir. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. A reminder to all the participants, you may press star and 1 to ask question. The next question is from the line of Sneha Talreja from Nuvama. Please go ahead.
Hi team, good afternoon and thanks a lot for the opportunity. Just 2 to 3 questions from mine. Firstly, on the call you mentioned that there were a couple of one-off impact, like the case of wage impact. You also mentioned, I think there was some forex loss. Could you quantify all the one-off impact in this particular quarter?
So those one-off impact, those like forex detail is already there already there. One-off is the exceptional, which is on account of wage code kind of a thing. That is 6.2 crore.
Some additional higher operating costs, versus like let's say Q3 or Q2. So no specific one-off case which we can mention right now, but yeah.
Understood. And secondly, with respect to demand, what we could see is, of course, there is quarter-on-quarter dip, which is seasonally there. But even in case of newer segments like plywood and all, we have not seen any particular improvement, in a strong way this particular quarter. Even your doors and flooring businesses, again, making losses in this particular. Was it any demand issue in quarter three as such, or you would just mention the seasonality impact in quarter three?
So if you see Q3 and Q3, so yes, obviously we've grown at 17 odd %, but in some segments the growth's not what it should be, and we said that earlier. So one, there is a seasonality impact because typically Q3 is a bit weaker, at least in our case. Traditionally also has been a bit weaker than Q2. So Q2 and Q4 are the better quarters. But on the demand side also, the feedback we have from our teams on ground and from our partners is demand is just generally a bit slow and there are cash flow challenges. So that's just more like a general feedback. I can't quantify to put a data to it, but that's the feedback we receive from people. But our domestic business also has grown at 17%. But yes, it could be because when you see it in light of Q2, sequential Q3 looks a bit weak in terms of the revenue growth, and it is weak actually versus Q2. So yes, people do say that demand's been a bit low on ground. Seasonality, Delhi NCR, GRAP issues. I think there's so many issues people keep talking about, but I can't put a finger on it actually. Yeah.
So in that case, we should see a bounce back in terms of profitability and revenue growth for all these divisions like decorative veneer, doors and floors, everything moving back to profitability by Q4?
So if you see Q2 performance at additional 100 crore revenues, our EBITDA, was about 106, 107. So fixed costs are more or less, done. GP, is being maintained. Price points are, maintained. Product quality, supply chain, factories all doing reasonably well. So I think if revenues go up, I don't see a reason why that won't happen actually. And we're pretty hopeful that revenues in Q4 should be decent. And traditionally also, we've done nearly similar numbers in Q4 and Q2 maybe at times, slightly higher than Q2 also.
Lastly, on the plywood front, our utilization is still hovering at about 30-35%. It's been roughly around 2.5 years of operations. What would you actually want to know? What is lagging in this particular segment? Is it as per the track that the company would have anticipated, or are we facing delays? If yes, this is on account of what? What's your reading on this?
So it's been slower than we expected. I think we're doing reasonably well in South India, and the other markets which we opened over, let's say, this FY and some in last year, I think they're still yet to kind of mature. We also have now in last, towards the end of Q3, done a soft launch of a variant, below the marine grade variant called BWP Plus, which is at a 5-6%, lower variant. So I think that offering was missing from our house, so we've done that also. So we still are hopeful that this number should improve. Feedback on product quality and secondary working, is pretty good. And I think with this brand architecture also, which we've streamlined with Mikasa brand carrying plywood, laminates, veneers, flooring door, and that also give it a bit of a more branding push and help in better demand creation. So we remain positive on the segment, but yes, it's been a bit slower than we expected.
Noted. And one last one, in case I may. You also mentioned that you've streamlined brands and you have launched, even laminates under Mikasa and, plywood was always there. Just want to understand what would be the difference between the Greenlam brand and Mikasa brand. What would be the price change between both? Let's say laminates of Greenlam is sold at what pricing range, and what would be that for Mikasa, and similarly for maybe one or two other products, in case you can give some color there.
So we didn't launch a brand new collection of Mikasa. We already had a brand called New Mica, in that 1 millimeter segment. So that's been rebranded, repositioned as Mikasa. So at one point we had 4 brands: Greenlam, Mikasa, Decowood, and New Mica. So Decowood, because the ply businesses moved together, was rebranded as Mikasa Veneer sometime earlier in FY26. And now with the new range launch of New Mica, we rebranded New Mica as Mikasa. So it was already existing. We just corrected the whole program and put it under one brand. So the Mikasa brand now is nearly 1,000 crore potential portfolio with all these categories. As far as the difference is concerned, there are 2 different brands. which have two different, product programs and ranges. So, from a price point difference, it's not much. Greenlam and Mikasa, on the main category would be maybe 3 to 5%, lower. Mikasa is probably 3 to 5% lower than Greenlam laminates, but it's not a price point driven program. It's more of a range catalog, common dealers, common specifications. I think that's the model of Mikasa laminates as we move ahead. And that's the only product which has an overlap. Otherwise, chipboard and plywood, flooring, doors, veneers are all. We don't have multiple brands. It's only in laminates we have this, a two-brand strategy.
No, I think that was pretty clear. And you also mentioned that this brand has potential of 1,000 crore revenue. If we may ask, what would be in FY26 estimated or FY25, what that would have been?
I don't have that math right in front of me. And Ashok is smiling, so I think we'll have to deal with Ashok on this separately, please.
Sure. We'll take it one-on-one.
We'll connect both.
Sure. Thanks a lot, team, and all the very best.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Bhavin Rupani from Investec. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, sir. Thanks for the opportunity. First question is related to chipboards. Are any indication of India level supply in terms of CBM as of now, and any gauges or any ideas on new capacities that are coming up?
So we have all this data, but it's not available right away on total installed capacity, because chipboard capacities have to be seen as wood-based particle boards, and bagasse-based, and then wood-based that are continuous lines and multi-layer lines. So I think we have all this data. It's not right off available here. So I think maybe someone can help you with that at a later point. As far as new capacities coming up, as far as I know, no new, major capacities are coming up. We do hear of some bagasse-based boards, plants coming up in some parts, but on the wood-based particle board or board plants of our size, I haven't heard of anything as of now. But that's what I know. But I'm not so sure on that. But with my understanding, not many or literally none new capacities are coming up at this moment, unless you have anything to add, Ashwini.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, I was saying the capacity we put up, was it an 85 rupee to euro rupee conversion? And now with the price points, clearly I think the capex costs also go up with the depreciation in both the dollar and the euro. So obviously it's going to be a bit harder in terms of capex costs, etc. But sorry, go ahead, please.
Got it. Yeah. And in case of raw materials, post BIS, what we have seen is decline in production of plywood by unorganized players. And what we understand is there is a case of shortfall of scrapped woods, which is generally used as an input for making chipboard. Is it by any chance impacting us, or have we seen any inflation over that in that part of the product chain, value chain?
As far as we are concerned, this is not because we were not using, plywoods. Like we were using our own generated, waste of our plywood factory, and the wood we were using. But from that point, we haven't seen much impact in our business. Maybe certain factories of chipboard were based on, wood waste generated from sawmill and plywood mills. But that was not the case in our factory. So we have our own chippers, so we are buying agroforestry wood from Andhra Pradesh and surrounding areas. So that's what impacted us in terms of supply chain or cost.
All right. And in case of resin prices, due to this ongoing political issues, how have you seen resin pricing reacting after December?
When you say geopolitical, right? Geopolitical issues.
Yes.
Yeah. So I said that earlier to somebody. I think the chemical costs have more or less been chemical and the output of resin more or less been stable despite the rupee depreciation. Maybe there's lack of demand or something of that sort. So actually, despite the rupee depreciation, resin costs or chemical costs, so by and large, some have gone down a bit, some have gone up a bit, but at an overall level, as cost of chemicals in raw material, it's been about the same.
All right. And one last question. So in case of chipboards, there is obviously high presence of unorganized players. So what I understand is their quality is subpar versus our product, right? So to compete with them, do we have any product which is at parity or comparable to them, or we don't produce such quality or mass end of the product?
No, so as far as the board quality, we have just one board quality. So we don't have a B grade board quality. But in terms of the decor range, so we have two decor range in melamine face chipboard. One's a studio, which is more premium, only European papers, and one's is called universal, which is a bit lower than the studio, where the decor papers are more suited to residential, usages of people who make furniture for, residential purposes, which are from Chinese origin or Indian origin. So that's priced at a slightly lower point. But the absolutely local market, Bagasse-based model, that's really, really cheap quality, so we can't even end up producing that in our factory. Or we can't even imagine producing that. So yes, we're not in that space, but you do appreciate with better quality chipboard. I think the market is also moving up, with the offering, and earlier there were not too many companies who were focused on this category. Now we have 2-3 companies who are focused and they have meaningful capacities. They have a pretty good range. They have teams on ground. So I think the category will itself kind of get uplifted.
So sure, sir, how should one understand the pricing differential between our product versus unorganized players?
In chipboard?
Yes.
So one is for the local companies or unorganized guys won't produce. So unorganized would again you have to see in two parts. One is the Bagasse-based producers, the other is the wood-based producers. So many of the local companies are limited by the dimension they can produce or the thicknesses they can produce. So the flexibility of the equipments or the technology can't produce, 6 by 8, 6 feet by 8 feet, 6 feet by 9 feet. Some can only produce some sizes. So it's a bit more longish discussion. But clearly, I think with the quality of board, they will not have magnetic controls. Their boards would consume more, blades of the OEM producer. The finishing will not be nice. There'll be undulations. The texture product will not be good. The resin emissions could be higher. So I think there's so many parameters, on that.
A point taken, sir, but how should one understand the pricing differential? So I understand that, yeah.
So pricing again would vary. So it depends on what you compare with. We could assume that local players would be about 15-20% lower in some cases. Some could be 7-10%. So can't put one number to it, but yeah, that's actually a range. Yeah.
Fair enough. All right. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. A reminder to all the participants, you may press star and 1 to ask question. Participants are requested to please press star and 1 to ask question. Is there are no further questions from the participants? I would now hand the conference over to the management for the closing comments. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining in for the call. In case you have any other questions, you can reach out to us or to SGA for any further clarifications. Thank you. Looking forward.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. On behalf of Greenlam Industries Limited, that concludes this conference. Thank you for joining us, and you may now disconnect your lines. Thank you.